The Constitution is a limited governance document. The First Amendment identified our God-given right to speak freely and imposes restraint that the government shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech. Mr. Turley, can you explain the implications of the government relying on private industry to circumvent the First Amendment?
Thank you for that question. The Supreme Court and lower courts have spent a great deal of time trying to define when a relationship with a private party can cross over to a type of agency relationship. And that also applies on the state level through the 14th Amendment. In cases like Page, for example, you have situations where you have a government official who called an employer to say, I don't like what this person said in a public meeting, and that employee was fired. And the court said, you know, that is government action. That is a violation of the First Amendment. One of the things that this subcommittee has to deal with is that difficult line, and I admit it is difficult. But in these Twitter files, there's a very disturbing picture that emerges. You have regular meetings between the FBI and Twitter. They even offer to give clearances to Twitter officials. You have complaints among Twitter employees that this is overwhelming in terms of the number. And what you really see is how insatiable censorship becomes, that eventually they were doing what appeared to be word searches and just sending all of these postings in for possible action by Twitter. And that included things like jokes and other things that anyone looking at it would realize that this is not a nefarious Russian operation. So when we talk about surrogate censorship, we're talking about one of the most serious threats against free speech. You know, people always say, well, you know, the First Amendment only applies to the government. The First Amendment is not synonymous with free speech. It deals with one problem of free speech. What we're talking about with surrogate censorship is a much greater problem for those of us who value free speech as a defining right of this country.